Today, in this demo, we are going to see how we can add authentication to a declarative agent when consuming an API plugin. And as was explained, I'm just the facilitator now. I'm just delivering you the video demo registered by Bob. So today we are going to talk about what we have in the exercises or labs E6 of the Copilot Dev Camp. And maybe you're wondering what the Copilot Dev Camp is. Well, actually, the Copilot Dev Camp is a set of videos and hands-on labs that we provide you to learn how to extend Microsoft 365 Copilot, whether you are a maker or a professional developer. There are multiple pathways that you can go through. Here you can find the URL to access the Copilot Dev Camp, aka.ms/Copilot Dev Camp, and even a QR code if you want to just go straight there right after this day. In the Copilot Dev Camp, as I said, we have multiple pathways. You can be a maker, and if you are a maker, you can choose if you want to build an agent for Copilot using the Copilot Studio Agent Builder or the Copilot Studio, the official Microsoft Copilot Studio tool, or if you want to create SharePoint agents. These are the options if you are in the no-code, low-code space. If you are on the coder space and you want to actually write code, you can choose to extend Copilot with declarative agents, or you can choose to build your own custom engine agents where you can rely on any foundational model and orchestrator of your choice. Today, we are focusing our attention on the declarative agents, which is also called the path E in the Copilot Dev Camp. If you want to learn more about the Copilot Dev Camp, you can also have a look at this video that I recorded a couple of months ago, where you can see all of the labs in little pieces and bytes. So you can dig into each of them and choose what is the best pathway for you. And if you will go through all of the pathways, you can even claim badges. So for each and every pathway that you will complete, you can get a badge with a blue belt, reminding the time when I was a judo boy. And you will have one for each of the pathway. If you will complete all of them, you will get a black one. You will be a path master. And if you will also share with the community your learnings and you will upload a sample to the community sample gallery, you will get the red belt and you will become a sample sensei. Keep into account that this will be the last week when we have this initiative so far. So you need to rush it. You need to go to Copilot Dev Camp, learn and claim your badges by the end of next week. That said, let's move to the actual content of this demo. And when you use Microsoft 365 Copilot, you can also rely on agents. And those agents can be based on content that you have in the Microsoft 365 tenant. So you go through the semantic index for Copilot and you get additional grounding data from your tenant. And as such, you will be able to access emails, documents, Teams chat, and stuff like that. But when you create custom agents for Microsoft 365 Copilot, you can also consume external APIs. However, we all know that whenever we consume an API, it is really important and fundamental to have security in place, which is precisely the topic of today's demo. And in fact, when you want to consume an external API from an agent for Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have multiple options. Of course, you can choose the anonymous one, which is definitely not the suggested one, unless you are using something like a weather forecast service or something like that. You have the option to use an API key, which is, again, not really the best option because you will not be able to give a personalized content to the user. Or you can rely on single sign-on with Entra ID or with Open Authorization 2.0, again, eventually including Entra ID as the identity provider. In these two scenarios, you will be able to give personalized content to your user based on who they are and on the authorizations that they have. So these are the suggested options. And today, we are going to see in the demo that Bob recorded how to use the single sign-on with Entra ID. So let me move to the actual demo recorded by Bob and enjoy the view.
So I'm going to choose the regular OAuth authentication because I can get Teams Toolkit to do most of the setup for me. And in the process, you'll get to learn how the Teams Toolkit setup files work. At this point, we've already built a declarative agent with an API plugin using the Tray Research Consulting example. And we're going to add authentication to the API so that it's secured. The first thing you need to do is to create what's called an Azure Active Directory manifest file. Azure Active Directory is the old name for Entra ID. And this is going to tell Teams Toolkit exactly what type of application it should register. So it has all the registration details inside of this JSON file. So go ahead and save that into the project. And we'll check that one off. And the next thing we need to do is edit a file called teamsapp.local.yml. And this is the instructions to Teams Toolkit when it sets up your application. Version 1.5 is what the previous lab had, but we had to update the schema and the version number so that it could do the app registration. So we're now on version 1.7 of that file. And next, we're going to add some instructions to have it register the Entra ID application. So we're just pasting some information under the provision section of the file, which is what happens when you hit F5, or part of what happens. And we've just added a step for creating the Entra ID app and another one for saving the details to our environment file automatically. The next step is to update that Entra ID application, and we're going to have it generate an app secret or client secret and some other details that happen after the registration time. So we'll just paste that into place. And there was a schema change around how the output files work. So we've just got to go in and quickly change the output path to use the new syntax for version 1.7. So we'll do that quickly, and it should fix the red squiggly line. It should go away for us, which is always good. All right. Finally, because our code is also going to need access to those environment variables, we need to tell Teams Toolkit to expose them. So this is where Teams Toolkit will write some values into our env.local file. And so that goes down here at the bottom of the file. And as I say, you don't have to remember all this. I just want to explain the principles a little bit, and then you can follow the lab instructions, which are on the Copilot Camp website. On this next exercise, I'm going to make the same changes basically to another file. This one is not teamsapp.local.yaml. This is just plain old teamsapp.yaml. And this one is used when you provision into Azure instead of running locally. I'm not going to be doing that here in this video, but it's just prudent to go ahead and fix it at this time. So another thing we need to add here is instructions to put the app inside the Teams developer portal vault. Now, since we're handling an app secret here, we can't put that in the manifest or anywhere where it would be shared. So the vault is going to safely store that information for us, and Teams Toolkit will put that in. So now we've told Teams Toolkit to provision everything. The next step is to tell Copilot that it needs to authenticate. So to do this, I'm going to go up to the app package and open up the Open API definition file. And this is all kind of a standard. This is not a Microsoft specific thing, but notice that I'm going to add a security schema in explaining to Copilot that there is an OAuth authentication that's needed. And then what I need to do is I need to add inside of every path that I've defined, I need to add that so that I'm telling Copilot, no matter which one of these API methods that I call, I always need to use the auth code. Now, if I wanted to have some of them be anonymous or use a different scheme, I could certainly do that right there. The next step then is to update the plugin file. So this file contains all the instructions, again, to Copilot, but everything that's not in that standard Open API definition file. So I'm going to change it from no auth to OAuth, and I'm going to reference that location in the Teams Developer Portal Vault so that Copilot can get to the app secret and do the OAuth flow that it needs to do. So at this point, Copilot knows how to log the user in and supply an access token. But there's no security unless we actually check the access token inside of our API. So that's the next thing that I'm going to do is the next exercise of the lab is update the application code. Now, unfortunately, Microsoft does not provide a library for validating access tokens in Node.js, and this is a Node application. There are detailed instructions on how to do this by writing your own code, and I'll reference those in the show notes. But to save you the trouble, my colleague Waldeck Mastercards has written this library called JWT Validate. I just want to point out that this is community supported. It's not officially from Microsoft, and you need to use it at your own risk. Or you can follow the official instructions and write your own validation code. Now I'm going to go ahead and install Waldeck's npm package, npm install JWT Validate, and that will load all of Waldeck's code and the library into place. So at this point, I need to update my own application code to use the library. And the app includes a service called the Identity Service, which is currently hard-coded to always assume that the user is Avery Howard, who is a user that's in part of the test data. So let me just show you the updates here. I'm going to go ahead and import Waldeck's library and then add a member to my class to store a reference to an instance of that library, because we want to let the library do caching of the private keys that are used to validate the token, and we only want to have one copy of the library, one instance running, so that caching will work. So now inside the class, we're going to check and see if we have a validator, and if we don't, we're going to go ahead and new that up. Next, we're going to set the validation options, which tells the library that we want it to check the tenant, the audience, the issuer, and the scope to make sure all of those things, as well as the digital signature for our token, are valid. There's details inside the comments, by the way. If you have a multi-tenant application, you need to do this slightly differently. And then we'll validate the token, and the library will throw an exception if the validation fails, and the code will return a 401 access denied. If the validation succeeds, we'll save away the user ID, username, and user email and return those to the requesting Azure function. So now let's go back to the lab and finish things off. We need to restart the app, but before we do that, I'm going to increment the manifest version number. This just sort of makes sure that Copilot is going to load a fresh version of the application. It's sometimes worse without this, but it is a good practice. So I'll go ahead and increment that and start the application fresh. And we need to stop and start the application so that we run that F5 logic, which will provision the application, registered in the Teams Developer Portal, and all those good things. So here we are inside of Copilot, and let me go into the Tray Genie, and I'll ask it what projects I'm assigned to, and it's going to get permission to call the API because it knows it's a new version of the app. And now there's a sign-on button. So I'm already signed into Entra ID, so I'm not going to see anything inside the pop-up, but there will be a pop-up which will run the auth code flow and log me in, and I'm logged in as Amber, so this is working correct. I'm very happy. I'm going to send some good feedback because it correctly identified me as Amber. Now, Amber's not on any projects, so I'll go ahead and ask it to assign Amber to, or assign me to a project. And it knows who I am as the logged in user, and sure enough, it went ahead and assigned Amber to the project. Now, I don't have time to show you this week, but there are additional labs, one with a completely manual setup. For instance, maybe you wanted to use something other than Entra ID, and another one with single sign-on, where the user doesn't even see the pop-up, and it works directly with their Teams or Copilot login.
So thank you, Bob, and thank you for your dedication to the community. I hope you enjoyed this demo, which was the last one in the Copilot DevCamp demo about the extend pathway. Next week, we will have another demo about building custom engine agents. So back to you, Vesa, and thank you.